afternoon. How's everyone? Had a good lunch? Ready to get going again? All right. All right, today we have a special guest here, John Williams. He's the CTO of Amplience. He's going to talk to us about why MACH matters. MACH is Microservices, API first, Cloudnative SaaS, and Headless. So, John, the stage is yours.
Let's see the mic. Oh, there, the mic's working. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for coming and seeing my event and my talk. Yeah, I'm John Williams, and yeah, thanks for coming to MACH Matters. Sorry, there you go. I'm not used to a Mac, even though it's MACH Matters. I'm John Williams. I've been in the industry about 35 years. 14 of which have been a CTO. I'm in the CTO at Amplience for 12 years. And this is the first time I've talked in front of people, like most of you, for about 3 years, I think it is, with COVID. I've been locked away, building a YouTube channel, trying to keep the skills going. And what's really interesting, I thought, when I was preparing for this, is that I had to suddenly start to think about not just what it looked like up here, because I've been on Zoom, right? And you're wearing your shorts and wearing your loose pants. I just started thinking about the rest of it, and I got out all my pants, tried them on before I came, and they were very tight, a bit snug. So I think it was the washing machine over the last 2 years. Maybe have a word with my wife and say, look, maybe we need a new machine. But yeah, anyway, I had to get something. I'm here, just managed to squeeze into them. But yeah, welcome. So I'm going to be talking today about MACH architecture. Something I'm really, really passionate about. I'm going to take you through what it is, why I think it's so powerful, and I'm going to do that through a little bit of storytelling about Amplience and how we became a MACH architecture. And also I'm going to talk about the MACH Alliance, because there's a lot of talk about MACH Alliance, and MongoDB has just joined the MACH Alliance as a tech enabler. So we'll talk about a little bit about what the MACH Alliance is and how it can help you guys. So this is our journey. This is why I'm so passionate about MACH. It's not just that I like it and I think it's pretty cool and it's a new bit of technology, not just on a bandwagon, so to speak. We've actually lived this. So I've got two of my team members here as well, and we are really excited and really passionate about MACH architecture because we started out way back 2010 with a little tiny team, about 11 people, and an inflatable T-Rex dinosaur. And now we are one of the leading global headless CMSs, driving digital experiences for some of the biggest e-commerce platforms and some of the biggest retail out there. So examples such as Gap in the US and Crate & Barrel, one of our great customers we worked with, as well as many others in Europe and the US. I'm not a sales guy, so I'm not going to put a big kind of marquee of logos there for you. But we're really passionate about it. It's been something that we've been on a real journey throughout, building our platform. And I think that a lot of the decisions that we made and a lot of the bets that we made on the architecture is really why we've been successful. And a lot of that has been down to actually where we got to today with MACH architecture and helped us be a founder of the MACH Alliance. So I'll start from the beginning. You've seen all of these slides before, right? There's the usual sort of layered diagram, architecture. This is how we used to design systems in the past, and it was pretty good, right? We used abstractions to create components, and then we used further abstractions to put those components into layers, and it looked really nice, really elegant. Architects loved them. You turn up to customers, they loved them. It looks like the world is nicely organized. But in reality, what happens is you start to try to develop these things, right? And although your components look nicely separated, you have to join them together. And you usually join them together with code. But what happens is that you start to get interdependencies between all of the layers. You get interdependencies between all of the components. And it starts to get a little bit messy. But you also get this. The platform becomes fused together to what we call today the monolith, right? So we didn't used to call it the monolith, but we call it the monolith now. And there were some downsides to the monolith. I mean, actually, it served us incredibly well. It's got us to where we are today. But there are some downsides. The longer you work on it, the harder it gets to develop. The slower your teams get, the development, test, release cycles get slower, right? And you've heard a lot about this, and you guys know this because you're here at the MongoDB conference. But it just gets much harder to develop. And also, scaling used to be quite tricky. You could replicate it on lots and lots and lots of servers. And that was good, except that if the only reason you're replicating it is because one of the components was under stress, but you had to replicate the whole thing, it kind of got a bit expensive and a bit awkward. And the other thing is that these things were designed really to deliver on one single channel. They're really designed to generate HTML for a website or an e-commerce site. So in today's world, you know that you're not going to just be doing to one channel. You're going to be doing to lots of channels. You're going to be doing omni-channel experiences in e-commerce. You're going to be delivering to native apps. You're going to be delivering to mobile apps, and delivering to all kinds of customer channels. And it's just not really fit for purpose for that. So this is where we come into MACH architecture. And the point of MACH architecture is it's a group of guiding architectural principles for building modern day software and taking the power of cloud computing to do that. And the real purpose of MACH architecture is really about moving towards a more composable architecture, right? Moving towards composable commerce systems. It's about the ability to pick best of breed vendors and pull them together to actually give the platform that you want. There's no more of this big monolithic suite that you buy and it's got everything that you need in one box and it should all work together. It never quite does, and you have to do a lot of work and a lot of customization. It's not about that anymore. It's about doing best of breed and assembling platforms from a group of vendors or your own services. Right, I don't need to do this now because he's already said it, but MACH is actually an acronym. Now, I say MACH, and it should be Mark or something like that. Think of Top Gun and you know, planes and Mach 1 and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm from the northeast of England, so I say MACH. But the first letter in the acronym is about microservices. Obviously, there's API first. We've got Cloudnative and Headless. Now, I'm not going to bore you with going through every one of these things in excruciating detail and give you a definition that you could probably read off Wikipedia or do a search on Google. What I'm going to do is try to explain to you why I think these things are so powerful and why they worked for us and take you through that kind of journey. So we're back in 2010 when we had that inflatable dinosaur. I joined Ampliance, and I joined my friend James Brook, and actually Darren was there at the time. And it was I'd come from this big agency, I'd grown this big agency, I was CTO there, had 150 people, and I joined this little company with 10 people in a little room, a little bit musty, orange carpets where I think they weren't originally orange, if you know what I mean. And it was just a really nice kind of startup thing, but wasn't many of us. And what we were building was this new product for retailers, which was all about reusing digital media, making it interactive so that they could basically make media like videos and images shoppable. And it was basically a CMS for interactive media and rich media. And it was pretty cool. But as you can imagine, in an environment like a startup environment with a small number of people, it's not got the same sort of infrastructure that you might be used to when you're from a bigger company. You know, we had servers at the traditional server under the desk, you know, running dev environments, QA environments. Someone had definitely had a chance of looking like they wanted to do a better job, had a rack stuck to a wall with a couple of servers on it. And they started to move some servers over into some data centers, right? But I had this challenge that our customers are retail customers. They wanted 4 nines. They wanted 0 downtime. We wanted to make sure that this new platform is going to be multi-tenanted and able to scale across every customer that we're going to have. Yeah, I've got all of this kit lying around in wires, and I haven't got the budget, the resources to have a large team to manage all of that, right? And I need to be fast and nimble because we're a startup. So at the very early stages, we're back in 2010, we went full cloud native. We moved everything straight into Amazon AWS, and it gave us a massive benefit because by going down the cloud computing route, which sounds like everybody should be doing that now, right, these days, but back then it was pretty new. But what it enabled us to do was turn from a little startup into a company that had the power of enterprise scale. We had enterprise tooling. We had the ability to scale all the way up to whatever we needed to do in terms of our customers, yet we could still work on that little budget. I mean, that is the value of it. And if you think about it, we didn't have to invest in a team that manages loads of servers. I didn't have to worry about replicating data centers because I was already deployed on 3 Zs in Amazon, so triple redundancy without even having to think about it. But the crucial bit about it is, and this is what's important to customers who use Mac platforms, is that you take away all of that non-differentiating pieces of work that you need to do. We could just have a very small ops team at the beginning, and I could focus all the resources on doing the things that's important, which is building the product, not managing and feeding and watering servers. So I know I'm not going in the right order of Mac. And then, so we moved everything to cloud, which was great. And the product was pretty cool, right? We had this kind of studio over here where business users used. It was all WYSIWYG. It looked super cool. Save content. It comes through an API, goes on a player. You drop a bit of embed code. Boom, it works on that website. And the customers kind of loved it, right? But what had happened is that we'd actually inherited a monolith. It was actually originally built when I turned up. Someone had started the work. Had built it using .NET with SQL Server and all of those things. So I started to struggle with the same things that everyone struggles with a monolith, right? So team, it was getting slower to develop, so it was getting harder to release things. And the other interesting thing was customers wanted to interact with our software and have even deeper integrations. But they couldn't because it was just a black box. It was running on the cloud, SaaS service, but there were no APIs apart from the API that talked to the player. But the customers wanted to interact with us. But we had this fantastic opportunity where we built another product. We moved into this other product alongside this, which was what we call dynamic media. And that was all about taking very large images and videos, allowing you to transcode that completely on the fly, so that you could basically take a super large TIFF image and then generate a JPEG thumbnail. You could take an image and get 100 width, crop it, quality settings, all of those things completely on the fly. But the use case for that was actually a product media use case. It was for customers to take their product assets and put them on the product page so that you could zoom into them and look at different thumbnails on the basket. It had this product media use case, which meant that if you had a customer with thousands of products, they would have tens of thousands of images. And our customers that we started to have had hundreds of thousands of products, which actually meant millions of images. So we had this huge throughput of images we need to get in the system and get out, which meant that the old way that we had, using this monolith and having everything in a UI, was just not going to work. There's no way you're going to drag and drop 1 million images into a system over a weekend. Ain't going to work. So we had to go down. They wanted to use automation use cases, so therefore APIs. And it was that point in time which actually we decided to go down the API first approach. We consciously went down that approach. And it's really easy to think of API first approach is just build some APIs and make sure everything's covered. But what it's really about is understanding the services that customers want, the services that can tap into the value of your platform and the value of your business. Because if you can think of it that way, they can take those APIs and do interesting things that you may not have thought about in the past. So yes, it's about making sure everything is covered in APIs and you've got access to everything. But it's also a mindset of thinking about your product as a service. And the side benefit we actually got from that was we managed to decouple the business user interface completely away from the back end, because we could just use the same services to actually run our front end. And we used an Angular JS SPA at the time. So it meant, again, I got more productivity because I had a team who can be focused on front-end development, don't have to worry about the back end, and I have back-end guys working on thinking about the services and the APIs and how that's going to work with customers. So I'm going to move on. So far, this sounds like a great story, right? Little startup, done a couple of products. They're really doing well, which we were, and we've got some great customers. But actually, the real story is never that simple. What I haven't told you about are the challenges that we had. There were some really difficult times that, frankly, could have meant the end of the company. And a lot of these were down to technology changes. So I'll tell you the first story is that imagine being a CTO of a company, joining it, got this super great, fantastic product. Thing is, what I didn't tell you was that the studio and the player was written in Flash. So these were sort of action script. It's written in Flash. 6 months after I joined, Steve Jobs gets up and said, it's dead. Flash is dead. Right? We're going to do iPads and stuff. Everything's going to change. Flash is dead. And I'm like, okay. What are we going to do now? And it seems like pretty drastic. Like, imagine even the team that you have, a portion of the team you have, they're like so focused into Flash as well. So what we looked at was that customers still wanted content. They still wanted our content, and they still wanted to get the content from us, but they just wanted it in a way that was more malleable, that you could ingest in lots of different ways and use and spread through their system, use in lots of different places. And actually, you know, like not worry about an iPad or worry about if someone's on a desktop with a Google Chrome. So what we did is we looked at what we had, and what we did was build a new player. We built a player in HTML5 because we already had the content as an API, technically going. We were just hydrating it in a Flash application, right? So we just replaced that Flash application with a HTML5. And actually, we did a little fancy stuff in the embed code that if you had a really old browser, it would still work because it would show the Flash one. With the new browsers, it would show the HTML5 one. And that was fantastic. And you know what? That was selling like hotcakes because it was a really high fidelity experience, hotspots and Q frames on videos. It went down really well until these things really started to take off, right? So now we've got a complete industry kind of switch where it was not just, are you going to be mobile first? It was like every mobile screen was different. All screen sizes were different. Orientations were different. Customer channels were completely different. There was a big proliferation of different digital experiences that we need to deliver in. And if your whole thing is based on a canvas, that's a difficult world to be in. You can try and make it a little bit more responsive. And if you're in a world where you've got embed code, and now you've got all these new fancy JavaScript frameworks at the time appearing that people want to use and not do this oldware, then that's like, what are you going to do? It's like, it's actually irrelevant. The technology is going to be irrelevant. So we looked at what we had, and we realized that we do have the content service already there, right? What we need to do is think a bit differently. Let's not worry about the heads, because they were heads pretty much, right? There were players, but they're pretty much heads. Don't worry about that. Just take that out of the picture and focus on the API. And that's when we started building our first version of Headless CMS, which was a headless CMS. And what we learned from that was it wasn't just about actually having the API. When you go headless, it's not just about replace what you have with an API. It's actually understanding that you've got to make everything all the way down into the data layer and all the way through independent of your presentation, right? So you can see, I know this because we have some competitors in the old world in web CMS that decided that just put an API on and that's it, it's headless. It's technically just decoupled, but it doesn't solve the problem. You know, we have to go back and make sure that we could create a system that customers could use that didn't have to worry about how it was going to be presented at all, and then deliver that through APIs. And actually, we had a huge amount of success for that, actually. It went really, really well. And then it was doing so well that actually with some enterprise customers, they wanted a lot more from us. They were like, this is really great, and we've got all these APIs, live at the cloud, it's highly available. You know, we were at that point, we were doing 100 billion requests a month or something in content. You know, it was really, really good. But we needed to extend out the platform with new features. And there was a lot of learnings that we had during the time of building version 1. It wasn't quite an MVP, but some people in the team might have said it was. But we needed to do something more. And again, you know, as a small company, you still have a lot of restriction in terms of resource. And you have to go to the board and say, we're going to rebuild the whole thing. And so how long is that going to take? So we decided to go down a kind of different route from where we'd had. We keep all the API firstness in the cloud, but then we decided to break it up into microservices. Because what that allowed us to do is basically organize our teams differently. The teams could then have the responsibility for different areas of the product, rather than just areas of the platform itself. They get independence in the decision-making about technology, so don't have to use SQL Server anymore. You can use MongoDB, right? Because they're responsible for doing that in their microservices. And we had a huge amount of success actually creating that platform. I think we did it in about 9 months now. And we actually built it alongside Crate and Barrel, which was great. We actually worked with a customer to kind of build that. And the microservices architecture just really helped accelerate a lot of that change. And I've talked quite a lot about all the individual stories, and there's like, you know, you can pick out some of the anecdotes, stuff that you already know about in terms of cloud computing and why API first is good. But often people ask me, well, why do I like MACH architecture? What do I think the biggest benefit of MACH architecture is? And I think that, in my opinion, if you look back at our company and what's happened to us, it's no different to many others. There have been 3 inflection points that could have caused us to kind of just disappear, right, be irrelevant. First one is obviously the Flash issue, which is, yeah, everyone can laugh at it now. And the second one was the fact that there's big industry change and shifts. And then the third one was, which is the most recent one, which all of us have been impacted with, which is COVID, right? No one really knew what was going to happen. There was a lot of change there, and people thinking very differently about how they want to use a platform. And we went from peak traffic and Black Friday to Black Friday every day on the platform, right? So we had a lot of inflection points, and we weren't too sure what was going on. But this happens to every business. What I'm saying is the change happens all the time, big changes, changes that affect us, changes that affect our customers. And most of the time, people will look at architecture and go, we'll future-proof it. So, you know, you'd be saying, well, MACH architecture, doesn't that future-proof your system, and that's why you like it? And I don't say that. I say that, no, you've got to you can't future-proof something, because to make sure something's future-proof, you've got to understand what the change is you're trying to proof against, and you don't know what that is. All you can do is be ready for those changes, be ready for the future. So I use the term be future-ready as opposed to be future-proof. So, and that's why I like MACH architecture, because it gives you a huge amount of flexibility. Having it in the cloud, having the API first approach and the microservices, and the fact that it's headless and you're not worried about the heads, just gives you a huge amount of flexibility and agility in the team. So it means that you can respond really, really quickly to change. And when I've worked with customers and I've seen the ones that have really struggled, and then the ones that have done really well, where they've changed really quickly to do curbside pickup and things like that, it's all been about the fact that they've had more of a MACH approach rather than being stuck with a monolith and haven't able to really move fast. So next steps. So I'll move on to the MACH Alliance. So if you're really interested in the sort of MACH approach, you should go and take a look at the MACH Alliance website. I had the URL on the other slide, sorry. But if you go to the MACH Alliance website, you can find a lot more about it. The MACH Alliance is an independent organization with a group of companies who are in basically the same mindset. We're all really passionate about how to build software. And for anyone to get in the MACH Alliance, we actually go through a strict vetting process. So we did at the beginning, although we were founders, it was a bit weird. We had to get other people to judge us. But we vet everything. I sit on the tech council at the MACH Alliance, and we spend a lot of time going through vendors and ensuring that they're MACH compliant. Even if you're a system integrator, you can be in the MACH Alliance. but you have to kind of prove that you're capable of building Mac type software, that you've done it before, and that you really understand the concepts and the things around cloud computing. And then we've got the tech enablers like AWS and obviously MongoDB, which is a new entrant into that. And another big part of what we do is about trying to educate people in the industry on what Mac really is and what we can do with the Mac architecture. Right, I've got a few more minutes, so I'll give you a few more tips with my lens slides. This is my dog Dash. He's a greyhound. I rescued him. He used to be an ex-racer. But I like it because one of the first tips I always say to people is that you should really start small. If you're going to go down a Mac route, don't just jump all in and change everything. Start small, pick an area, do a proof of concept, and once you get that and you start learning, then rapidly start moving across the platform, because it's all about incremental approaches as opposed to big bang and big phased approaches. The next one is, and it's not always obvious or people talk about it, which is you've got to really start thinking about how to organize your teams, because I love this quote, right? It's basically the systems you end up building end up looking like your organizations. So the big problem I see in lots of Mac implementation, or lots of headless type implementations, is that everyone gets focused on platform replacement. They have a platform replacement team, and then everything else is nice. They have product teams as you'd expect, but they can't do anything unless the central team does something, and then you've got a waterfall and everything else. So think very carefully about how you're going to organize your teams when you go down this, and make sure you're going down a strangulation pattern and putting your teams down that kind of route. And then the big one, I think, for me is it's really easy to get drawn in to the technology and get excited about all the new technology and all the new architecture and getting into the platform replacement, and forgetting that the reason why you're doing it in the first place is that the business wants to be more agile. The business needs to go more towards new channels and deliver to new customers and innovate and move faster and all of those things, not the fact that they just want to replace a bit of the platform. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you for listening to my story. If you've got any questions, willing to answer them.
Thank you so much, John. That was amazing. We have time for one or two questions.
Thanks, John. That was really insightful. My question is, you mentioned in the Mac it was a combination of IoT and voice as well. And I wanted to understand if you had any kind of integration there, and if you had, was there any challenges or anything on that front you'd like to share? Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, it's ultimately the headlessness and the API-ness allows you to work with different devices. I'll use my favorite example, which is Traeger grills. So Traeger grill, I don't know if anyone does any smoking, but Traeger grill has an app, it has a website. You can get recipes, and then you can use those and sync them up to your Traeger. Traeger's one of our customers, and we went out to Salt Lake and talked about how we could push content into the Traeger grill. And that's my favorite example of that. And there was just lots of thoughts around things like, with the content, it was like make sure that we could put it into small pieces because you've only got a smaller screen. But it actually, because of the way it worked with APIs and the delivery, it was actually quite easy for them to do. And I ended up buying a Traeger grill in the UK. So.
Hey, John, really great talk. So I now work for GSK. I'm ex-Boots, both big, huge enterprises. Now, Boots in particular absolutely understood that it needed to go down the Mac route. But I think very quickly as they started to go down that route, one, they were very constrained by all technology choices. But actually, as they started to develop microservices, the microservices started to become mini monoliths. So I just wonder if you can reflect a little bit about your experience of kind of how you educate the business in effectively making macroservices and actually making sure that the code that we're creating is nimble and adaptable in order to meet their use cases. Yeah, I mean that is a big challenge. If you're doing your own microservices, particularly, you can end up going down a more macro service route, and you just end up with a monolith. But I think it goes down to a lot about how you organize the teams again, and how you set up product ownership. If you go down a route of project, and you're just going through a project, moving through the system like a wildebeest, just replacing one bit with APIs, and say, oh, we'll just make the microservices.
it's really difficult then because you're kind of losing the context. The project is to replace something, not to deliver a piece of value. But I think if you think about it in terms of the product teams themselves owning that, then it's less likely to happen. But I can see what you mean. I mean, I've worked for Boots in the past as well, actually. But I see what you mean. With a bigger organization, it can be very difficult. And that's what I was saying earlier, is that often what happens is the teams follow the fault lines of the political side of a business, which means your systems then start following those kind of political boundaries as well. And that's really hard to do. And we've had customers that have moved to the kind of Spotify, more towards the Spotify model for organization, which really has helped them understand and keep that, the microservices in a more neat and organized way. Sorry? Yeah, I know. We have the Spotify model, but it's an adaptation.